Welcome to 20% Time, a podcast from the team at Titan, a web development consultancy that specializes in Laravel, Vue, React, Livewire, all kinds of stuff. My name is Dave Hicking, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Susanna, as always. Susanna, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. The weather has been nice and cool here. Fall is arriving in the Northeast. We're getting close to like one of our three weeks in the spring and 3 weeks in the fall when it's actually nice, and it's not either a hot, swampy like mess or it's not like a frigid ice hellscape. I'm just kidding. It's not really that bad, but no, the weather's lovely, so that means I'm in a good mood, and yeah.
Oh, that's good. I mean, the UK, we tend to have only one sort of kind of weather. It's the overcast, rainy weather. But I have to say, this year it's been really good. The summer was really, really hot.
Oh yeah.
Some people didn't like it, so
yeah,
it's not very typical British weather. But
so you're looking
back to the overcast.
I was going to say you're looking forward to that cool down.
Well, it arrived. It's
Okay,
here now. Summer's over now. Like, let's not push it, and back to rainy days.
Yeah. And while we've been sitting here just chatting about the weather, we have our wonderful guest.
How British of us, huh?
Wonderful guest has been sitting here in silence so patiently. We are joined today by Aaron Francis, who he does a ton of stuff in the Laravel community. If you know this podcast because it's put on by Titan, I can't believe you couldn't be following Aaron already on Twitter. Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing great, and I am jealous about the weather y'all are talking about. I'm in Texas, where it's going to remain hot for another month and a half. So that's why I was quiet during the weather segment.
Oh yeah, Texas. We have a number of folks at Titan who either live in Texas now or who have lived there in the past. I went to high school in rural Oklahoma, right over the Texas border, so I remember it's very hot. Even the wind is hot.
It is. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Fortunately, I'm not in Houston or Galveston where it's hot and humid. I'm in Dallas where it's just hot, but boy, is it just hot.
It's just hot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today. So for folks who may not have heard of you before, who maybe, heard the name, but can't place the voice or don't know much about you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do? Who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with context, maybe in the Laravel community. I've built a couple of packages. I think at the last Laracon, I was doing a demo on Sidecar, which is a Laravel package that helps you with AWS Lambda functions. And that one is just like a whole lot of fun. More recently, I've done one for pagination, kind of like a database, like kind of hack, but makes your pagination faster. And it's called FastPage. So that's kind of some of the context for Laravel. I've built a lot of packages, and they all kind of live under hammerstone.dev, which is my main side project area. What we're going to be talking about today is Torchlight, so I'll save that one. But then professionally, I now work at a database company. It's called PlanetScale, and I'm now a developer educator there. So I had been working on this MySQL for Developers course for a super long time and kind of been tweeting about it and writing articles to get people on the mailing list. And the CEO of PlanetScale DM'd me and was like, "Hey, how come you don't work for us?" And I was like, "Well,
that's a
what? One, because I have a job, and two, because nobody's ever asked me to come work anywhere."
What a DM to get!
Yeah,
total power move that only the CEO could do.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
He was like, "Hey, what if you come work for us and we buy this unfinished course off of you and you do it for us and you just keep writing your same articles, but you do it for us." I was like, you know what? That sounds amazing. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Oh, so how is the course going? How far along are you?
Susanna, that's an interesting question, isn't it? It's funny you should ask that. So here's the deal with the course. I've read, I don't know if you could see it in the background, I've read like maybe 7 or 8 MySQL books and kind of pulled out all of, I think, the interesting parts, of which there are many, but maybe fewer than you would expect. And I have the outline and the references and the material totally done. So that part I feel super good about. I haven't recorded a single video, but I have maybe 1,000 people on the mailing list, and I have my outline and all the stuff I want to hit totally finished. And it's really interesting because the whole shtick is like MySQL for developers, not for DBAs, but like you as Laravel developers, what do we need to know about MySQL? Like not only to get by, but to make it performant and like fast enough. And so it's been a whole lot of fun. I've been working on it for maybe, a year, but recorded videos, 0. Content outline, 100%. So I don't know. You tell me.
No, I think from what I've done and seen, I think you've done the hardest part. You've got the outline, you've got the material, the recording, it's easy peasy. Just get it done.
I hope so. Yeah, that's the encouragement I was looking for. So thank you.
There you go. And also, I think you printed out it's MySQL docs, haven't you?
Yeah, that's them.
Like, that's way above anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, so that gives you an idea of how into this I am. Yeah, I printed out 2 chapters of the MySQL docs. One was on optimization and one was on like data schema. And I wanted to know, like, these books are great, but the books are based on something, right? And I wanted to go to the source and see, like, where are these people getting their information? And I can't sit there and read it on a screen because that would just be brutal. Yeah. So I just went to FedEx and was like, hey, I have this PDF. Can you print it and bind it? And they're like, yeah, that'll be $20. It's like, amazing. So yeah.
It's cheaper than a book.
I know. So they print it and bound it for me. And it's been awesome. I can highlight and put stickies in it. And it's super nerdy, but it's a lot of fun.
I think you're probably the first person I've heard saying that reading docs is awesome and super fun, and you're highlighting.
I love it.
I mean,
it's great because it's like reading blog posts is fun, but it's kind of disjointed. Reading a book is great because it gives you this super high level overview of like the universe in which you're working. Reading the docs is wonderful because besides reading the source, it's like as close to the source as you could get. And the people that write the books are pulling, from their experience, of course, but a lot of it comes from like just the raw documentation. And so if you can go down there and look and see what's actually there, I feel like it's really, really valuable once you kind of have a framework where you can slot it in.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that sounds exciting. I can't wait for the course to be finished. Hint, hint, just saying.
Thanks.
I think half of Titan has already signed up for it. I think we will all take it, yeah.
Well, the good news is it's going to be free now because Planet Scale obviously makes money other ways. So the course is going to be totally free.
Yeah, that is amazing. I cannot wait, honestly. Especially now seeing how excited you are about it. I've known you are excited about databases. I know that about you. But now hearing you speak about it, I wish people could see your face, how you light up when you speak about database queries. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, we all have our thing, and I am of the firm opinion that you should lean into your thing and be unabashedly excited about it.
Yeah, good for you.
Okay, so Torchlight. First of all, great name.
Thanks.
I want to ask about, we can ask about how you came up with the name, but let's start actually just with, like, for folks who don't know what Torchlight is, what's the elevator pitch for Torchlight?
The elevator pitch for Torchlight is it is a syntax highlighting API. So you're used to Highlight.js, Prism, I get that confused with Prisma, but Prism.js, and those do syntax highlighting on the client side. Torchlight does syntax highlighting via API. So I've built a bunch of clients that contact the API, but we do, I want to say perfect syntax highlighting because it uses a much more powerful engine than you can use in a browser.
Do you have that on the website? Do you have the phrase perfect syntax highlighting? Because that's pretty good.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
We need to talk about.
Go for it.
Sure.
Yeah, we need to talk about the website because y'all actually did an amazing redesign that I haven't pushed out there yet. So maybe I'll put that as the headline.
Perfect syntax highlighting. That's interesting.
Obviously, it works when you bold and when you go after what you want. Case in point, doing your job. So just be bold. Go for it.
Yeah, I like that. I may actually do that. I may take a stance and say this is perfect syntax highlighting.
Yeah. And so obviously before you built Torchlight, what was the problem you were trying to, why? What made you even think about building something yourself? Because I know us as devs, it's often like, oh, we don't need a package, we just build it ourselves. Some people go for it, some people don't. So what was it for you that made you think, okay, I'm going to build it myself. I'm going to make my own highlighter?
Yeah, so I was writing all the docs for these various packages that we have at Hammerstone. Primarily, I was writing the docs for a package called Refine, which is like a visual query builder. And in the docs, there were 2 things that were happening. One is I was getting bad syntax highlighting. So it was just like objectively wrong. And a lot of that was coming with maybe some new PHP, 8 stuff that let's say Highlight.js or Prism wasn't caught up to yet. And so I was getting these really gross, like the second half of the code block was just gray. It's like, man, this
Yeah.
looks really unprofessional. Like, would Adam Wathan be okay with this? No. So I'm always trying to live up to his standards. And so I was like, this is terrible and it looks stupid. So that was the first thing. The second thing was I really wanted, so like as I was writing these docs, I had these giant code block sections, and I wanted to be in the code block giving more context to what I was trying to communicate, right? So in documentation, you're trying to communicate a thought, and I wanted to be in the code block being like, no, look right here at this line. This is the line you should pay attention to. But I couldn't just show that line because the surrounding context was important, but I wanted to focus the reader's attention on a particular thing.
Yeah.
And so I ended up having like all these hacky workarounds to like add extra classes to a certain line. And I thought, man, this is really painful. And so the reason that I built it is because I found this great tool called Shiki, which is a syntax highlighter, but it's node only and it's really rough around the edges. And so I thought I could write an entire framework around this and then use Shiki to like do some of the syntax highlighting and then kind of write my own renderers to add all these extra touches to it. And then that would give me the best ability to communicate what I'm trying to teach to the reader. And so that's kind of where I ended up, was like, one, the syntax highlighting is wrong, and two, I'm not able to add context that I think would be helpful.
Yeah, kind of when you mention it, I think it should have been possible. Like, it seems such an obvious thing to do. Like, obviously I can see the use case for that. But yeah, so how long did it take you to? So how long have you been working on it? When did you start? Has it been a long time?
Oh yeah, it's been
project?
over a year. I did this adorable thing on Twitter where I was like, I'm gonna launch this project in a day. Follow along with me. And that was literally 18 months ago. And I look back and I'm like, oh, you cute, naive spring child. So yeah, I mean, the proof of concept I got done pretty quickly and was using on the hammerstone.dev site pretty immediately. And since then, it's been a whole series of tweaks and optimizations and improvements. Just recently, I've launched a parallel infrastructure to do all the rendering that I'm about to switch everybody over to. Because as you can imagine, like, doing all of this rendering, like, it has to be so fast because in some cases it happens in the request response lifecycle of people's applications. Like for Jigsaw, it doesn't. You build it, it gives you perfect syntax highlighting as HTML, and then you ship it to, S3 or whatever, wherever you host your website. For some people, they're using it in Laravel in the middle of the request response lifecycle. And so I can't be, dorking around for 5 seconds, like highlighting code. It has to come back super fast. And so there have been some pain points along the way. But I think I've got the infrastructure set up such that now I can almost guarantee fast enough response times across the board, regardless of load.
Do you feel like it's finished? It's done, the package? Or, I mean, obviously there's always things to improve, but like the major features, do you feel like you're done?
I feel like from the user perspective, so from the perspective of somebody that wants syntax highlighting, it's done. I think there are a lot of great features. One, it works. Like, it gives you correct syntax highlighting. Whatever you're going to get in VS Code, you get in Torchlight, and I feel good about that. Yeah. And two, it has all these great like annotations where you can highlight or show diffs or do collapsing or blurs or whatever. So from that perspective, I feel like it is done. From my perspective, I feel like it's not even close to done. I have big plans for it. One is I finally got this new infrastructure set up, and so I need to switch over to that so that everybody's using it and not just a few people. And then corresponding with that, so that is like step one. And then step two is make it free. Like right now it costs money. I mean, it quote unquote costs money. I don't enforce anything. So, do whatever you want. It's free. So right now it costs money, but I want to make it explicitly free. And this infrastructure obviously is a prerequisite to that because I'm hoping that the load will go up when it becomes free. So once it's free, then I need to, as a part of making it free, I need to launch this new design that y'all have done for me that looks amazing and looks modern. And Then after that, I have an in-browser client that actually contacts the API. So it doesn't do the highlighting on the client because that's
Mm-hmm.
still too expensive to ship all the stuff required, all the language files, but it does the highlighting from the client. And so I feel like that is just going to explode the use cases because now people can just put a JavaScript snippet on their page like they are used to, but
Yeah.
then get Torchlight instead of like Highlight JS or Prism or something like that. So I have a long way to go, but I feel like from the user perspective, yeah, it's done. Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sort of talked a bit about some of the things that you really sort of motivated you, and reading through the existing website, I noticed, I don't know, I kind of feel like that you can get a little bit of sort of the story behind this, right? Things that really kind of, I'm assuming, drove you a little nuts about earlier syntax, sort of previous syntax highlighters. You call out, there's no flash of unstyled, text. There's you're not using JavaScript. Aside from those, are there any other sort of specific real annoyances that you really wanted to make sure Torchlight solved that we haven't talked about yet?
I think the biggest one is the flash of unstyled, the huge JS bundles, like, oh, that's a pain. I think the biggest one is the context. So being able to add all of these annotations in your actual code block, and that's something I focused really, really hard on, was I want the authoring experience to be delightful, right? When you're writing your documentation, I want your code examples to remain valid code, because if you're putting all these fake markups inside your code and then you hit auto format in your editor, like it's gonna make your code blocks all wonky because it's like encountered this Torchlight syntax that it doesn't recognize. And that's what happens with other syntax highlighters. It's like, just put these curly braces wherever you want, and then in your editing experience it's like, well, this isn't valid code anymore, so I don't know how to format it, so now your docs look crappy, right? So I spent all of this time figuring out how could I weasel this extra metadata into a real code block without dorking up the formatting. And I figured out that I could, in every language, there is comment syntax besides JSON, but in every language there's comment syntax. And I could put all of this extra rich metadata inside an actual code comment. And at that point, it doesn't mess up your formatting. It doesn't mess up your editing. And then I can like read that metadata out and then strip the comment and throw it away. And so now I can do all this super powerful stuff and your user never sees it. And as the author, you get to write real code and not have to worry about like these weird annotations that are going to throw everything off.
So you mentioned like how, well, the things that Torchlight does, but how do you, because syntax highlighting seems quite complex to me. I mean, I've never looked into it. So how does Torchlight do it? Like, can you walk us through an example? How does it do it?
Totally. So Torchlight sits on top of a package called Shiki, and Shiki sits on top of a package, I don't know what it's called, but it's like the VS Code engine, right? So at the bottom is this open source VS Code. And what that does is the VS Code engine takes in what's called language files. And I think they're like TOML files. It's this weird, I think it's Tom's obvious markup language, but it's these super old files that everybody uses. Text Wrangler, like everybody uses these files. And these files are like the biggest, grossest, nastiest set of regular expressions that you've ever seen in your life. It's insane. And I've only written one, and it was a brutal experience. So I don't have to muck around with them too much. But under the hood are these giant language files that are constantly updated. Like Statamic has its own, PHP has one, everybody has these language files, right? And so the VS Code package does all of the parsing and what they call, I think, tokenizing. So it takes a block of code and turns it into tokens based on the regex. And so it's like, this is a keyword, this is a variable, this is a comment. And so what I get from Shiki, and Shiki just adds a little bit of like, it pulls in themes and language files and it kind of packages it up for you. What I get from Shiki is a bunch of tokens. And it says, this is the block that the user gave me, Torchlight, and then I pass that through to Shiki and it gives me back a set of tokens. And then once I have those tokens, I'm back in Torchlight land where I have to figure out how do I turn those tokens into HTML.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I start like scrolling through all of the tokens and inspecting each individual one and seeing like, okay, is this a comment? If it's a comment, does it have a Torchlight annotation? If it does, well, I need to start like building up some diffs, or I need to start building up like some blur syntax or stuff like that. And so I get the tokens back. I go line by line, token by token, and just start building up HTML. And then I return it back. And so I sit on top of a whole lot of helpful libraries, but the renderer is, 2,000 lines of JavaScript that I handle. So all I get back is tokens, and then I have to do all the rest, which is great because the tokenizing seems a lot harder, honestly.
Yeah. So why did you choose this approach? Why even use like this, I don't know, like not the client side syntax highlighting? Why did you go for this approach?
I found it could have been an abundance of naivety, but I thought it was going to be easier. Which is, how we all start. Oh, this is going to be easy. So I found that it was really, really hard to get the syntax highlighting right on the client side, because the client side libraries don't use these TOML files. They don't use these language files. They have their own kind of, without being disrespectful, kind of more anemic. They're a little bit weaker. Like these language files that they use, it's like, it works 80% of the time, 90% of the time. And the reason they do that is because the browser is so underpowered compared to a server, right?
Mm.
And so part of my operating hypothesis was, if I can sit on top of VS Code, then I can take advantage of an entire like multi-billion-dollar ecosystem that is hell-bent on keeping these language files up to date, right? Because it's a much bigger problem if syntax highlighting doesn't work in VS Code than if it doesn't work on Aaron's fun highlighting site, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought there's an entire ecosystem of thousands of people that are concerned with these TOML files that are going to keep them up to date. Like when PHP 8.2 drops, somebody is going to update that file, and it's not going to be me. And so that was kind of like, as one person, what can I do? Not write language files, but I can sit on top of some open source ones. And so that was kind of my theory.
Yeah, it sounds good. So you said as one person, doesn't mean you're the only one working on Torchlight, or do you have anyone to help you?
Nope,
you're the
just
only
me.
one.
I'm the only one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you manage with all the other things? So you mentioned Hammerstone, you've got job at Matska. How?
That's a good question.
And you've got twins, don't you, right?
I've got twins, yeah.
I mean,
16-month-old twins. The first and most honest answer is my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and I wouldn't have time or space to do a lot of this other like fun outside of work stuff if she had a full-time job. I wouldn't have the space. And so most of the credit goes to her, to be honest. And then beyond that, like I don't it's going to sound really sad. I don't think I'm that interesting. Like I don't have a lot of other hobbies. I don't like, I'm not into the NFL, so I don't watch, like I don't spend all my Monday nights and Thursday nights and Sundays watching football or anything like that. So I don't play video games. This is like, I love working on this kind of stuff. And so I just end up like thinking about it and working on it. And, I go in cycles, I burn out and, don't work on stuff. And then I come back and work on it a bunch more. So I don't have like a huge secret. I don't have like a Notion system that keeps me focused every minute of every day. I miss a lot of stuff. Like I sit on emails longer than I should. So like, I'm not like the picture of productivity. I have a lot of fun doing some stuff. And so I work on it. I basically follow my energy as much as I can. And kids go to bed right now at like 7 or 7:30. And then we have dinner, my wife and I, and then that's like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. You want to watch TV? You want to work on some stuff? I've recently gotten into reading sci-fi. And so like, I don't know. I just kind of follow whatever I'm interested in.
I think that's really good. I like it. Like just follow your energy. That's what
totally
phrased it. Yeah. I think because a lot of things we do these days, they drain our energy rather than, pump us up. So
exactly.
just follow follow, go with the wind. I like that.
Oh,
And well
thanks.
done. I mean, you are quite interesting. You say you're not that interesting. I mean, to me, you printed MySQL docs. You are interesting. Come on.
Well, for certain definitions of interesting, sure.
So, Aaron, you're pretty heavily in the Laravel sort of PHP ecosystem, and Torchlight, I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, seems to somewhat target that community, even though, it's not like at the top of the current site. It's not like it says, you're not really trying to hit that too hard. But I've also seen on Twitter that you occasionally dip your toe into mingling with the Rails world,
Mm-hmm.
and your partner at Hammerstone is in the Rails world.
Yep.
And so
Fully.
obviously Torchlight is an API, so folks outside the Laravel world could use it. Do you see a push in the future towards targeting other communities, or are you sort of happy where you're at?
Both.
Yeah.
I think I'm happy where I'm at in terms of like objectively, I made a thing that people use, and that feels pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yes, and I have plans for Torchlight. So that y'all, all the listeners, don't tell everyone. I want Torchlight to take over the world. That's the plan. And so
It's a modest plan.
yeah. So keep it under your hat. So the plan, the time dilates before me. I think everything's going to happen quickly. And then anyway, so the plan has been moved to this new infrastructure, which I would love to talk about because it's interesting. Then launch this new website, and then, or maybe in opposite order, have the in-browser JavaScript client. And so once all of those things are done, the plan is to basically, Hacker News, Reddit, Product Hunt, maybe, to say free syntax highlighting that's better than what you have. I won't say it that way, but that's better than what you have. Drop in this JavaScript snippet and you're off to the races. If you want to do a deeper integration, it's an API, so you can do a deeper integration.
Right.
So like all these static site generators, like I wrote the one for Jigsaw, but that's just because I know Jigsaw and I use it and I like it. I don't know Jekyll. I don't even know what the other ones are. But yeah, the goal is to expand into the entire known universe and have Torchlight be out there. So yeah, that's my goal. We'll see how long it takes to get there, but I think in the next couple of months, I'll have it ready where it's free, it's available in the browser, and the infrastructure is like totally scalable and solid.
So you just kind of teased a little bit this new infrastructure. You wanted to talk more about it. So let's just give you the nice softball question. Aaron, could you tell us more about this new infrastructure?
Wow. Love this podcast. I love being set up like that. Yeah. So historically it has run on, so it's all Node, right? So I'm a little outside of my traditional area of expertise already. So I've run the whole thing on Vercel, and Vercel's great, serverless, scalable, whatever, super nice. It's not that great, candidly. Again, don't tell anybody. But it sits on top of Lambda, which I know and love. Yeah. And Lambda suffers from cold boots, which maybe we all know about. But when you step up a level, so like I've used Lambda and I can like pretty much control it however I want. When you step up a level, you lose some of that control. So Vercel gives you a lot of developer experience niceties, but I also lose a little bit of like, what's actually going on here? And so I would hit these cases where people would have these requests and they would just time out after 5 seconds. Vercel will run longer, but I have the clients time out after 5 seconds. So, and people would DM me and be like, hey man, why is this timing out? And I'm like, oh, because Vercel sucks. And I would never say that, but that's
Sure.
what I was thinking, right? I was like, oh gosh, let me like look into it. I'll see if I can make any tweaks that make that better. And I just couldn't. And it was really discouraging for a super long time. And so the new infrastructure is raw AWS Lambda. So I have all the rendering done on Lambdas, but what I didn't want to do is enter this world of like, now I'm this serverless AWS hero. Like those people are geniuses and I just don't want to learn. I don't want to learn all of that. Like right. I don't have the time and I don't have the energy and I don't think that's how I want to architect my applications, to be frank. So what I did was fly.io is this new kind of platform that gives you geographically distributed servers, like for real servers, not like serverless. You get an actual server you can SSH into. And so now the architecture is such that I've got, I think, 7 or 8 Fly servers all around the world, and that's going to be really important when it comes to client side highlighting, because you need the response times to be super fast,
Right.
and the speed of light is still a thing. So having a server in Paris and a server in Sydney is going to help, people in Paris and Sydney. So in the front, like, the requests are received at the Fly IO layer, and that's actually just running a Laravel server or a Laravel application, which is awesome because we love Laravel and it's easy, right?
Yeah.
So it's running a Laravel app with Octane enabled, and that's important. I'll come back to that. So it has Laravel Octane running, right?
Mhm.
So these 7 or 8 servers are just hanging out all around the world, receiving requests. Fly is doing all the routing to find the geographically closest location. Totally rules. It's amazing. Then what that Laravel server does is that, so let's say that so Laravel.com uses Torchlight, right? One of their pages could easily have 250 code blocks on it because, the page is super long and there are tons of
Yeah.
examples. I can't send 250 blocks to a single renderer because, even at 10 milliseconds each, that's going to end up taking a long time, and it takes a little longer than 10 milliseconds. So what I do is at the Laravel layer, I break that up into chunks of, say, 5 blocks each, and I dish those out to rendering lambdas using Sidecar, a package that I wrote, right? So, yeah.
So
and
meta.
I know, it's wild. So at the Laravel layer that is hosted on Fly, it ends up with, say, 50 requests that then are dished out to individual lambdas to do all the rendering. Then those lambdas render everything, and it comes back to Laravel, where I stitch the whole response back together and send it back to the browser or to the client or whoever requested it, right? And so this is super nice because regardless of how many blocks you send me at once, I'm not bound by whatever machine received it, which was the issue with Vercel, right? I was bound to the single lambda. Now it's totally able to be sent out in parallel. And so regardless of how many you send me, it's fine. What I can do also is I can cache at the Laravel level, right? So these machines, these Fly machines are proper machines. And so I can do caching at that level, which is important again for the client, the in-browser client, because I can at that point cache the responses such that they never have to reach the Lambda in the first place, right? So if I've seen a particular code block with all of its options and configuration and everything, if I've seen that before, I can just return it without hitting Lambda. And we're talking like 35, 50 milliseconds, something like that. And so that gives me a whole level of API side caching, where historically it was only client side caching. And then, if you'll indulge me, the final thing is Laravel Octane, right? So I thought Octane was cool, and Octane is the thing that keeps Laravel alive from request to request, so it doesn't have to reboot. I thought it was cool. I didn't realize, and don't scoop me on this, listeners, because I want to write an article about this. I didn't realize one of maybe the best things about Octane, and it has nothing really to do with Laravel, it's Guzzle, right? So Guzzle, we all know and love, everybody uses it. It's our HTTP, whatever. So everyone uses Guzzle. Guzzle will keep connections alive as long as the Guzzle client stays alive, right? So in typical Laravel world, the request comes in, Laravel comes to life, the universe is built, the universe is destroyed. And that's it. Game over, right?
Yeah.
In Octane, the universe sticks around for a while, which means if you do it correctly, Guzzle, a Guzzle client can stick around for a while. And so in my case, it reuses these connections to the AWS data centers so that it doesn't have to reopen and renegotiate SSL every time, right? So Guzzle stays alive, and then I can reuse those open connections so that my next requests to AWS Lambda don't have to negotiate any sort of connecting. They're already open and they just fire them back through the same one. And this is like default Guzzle that I had never, ever heard about. But it saves a ton of time when you're talking about, let's say, 15, 20 milliseconds round trip if you don't have to renegotiate that TLS handshake or whatever it is. That's above my pay grade, but it reuses it. And so that part of Octane is really, really crazy to me, and something that I never knew would be a benefit. But when I was looking at these request times, I was like, man, it's having to reopen these requests to the AWS data center all the time. And that's super painful. I wonder if that's workaroundable. And Guzzle was like, yeah, we support that by default. Just don't kill the client. It's like, wow, this is incredible.
Wow.
So that's kind of where I ended up. And that's, I think the logical extent to as fast as I can make it, provided my same restrictions that I want to kind of keep Laravel in the stack and keep it easy on me personally. I'm sure I could make it faster, but I don't have enough knowledge to do anything different.
I mean, listening to it's amazing. Like, you are obviously passionate about Torchlight, but was there a point during you building it or marketing it when you thought, oh, maybe it's not worth it? Was there ever?
How long do you have? Yeah, I mean, so I think I harbor this dream of being like, a SaaS boy where I just make a ton of money off SaaS and just get to sit in my shed and do whatever I want all day. And like, so when Torchlight came to me, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get rich. And, it's really hard to sell syntax highlighting. And the dollar amounts we're talking about, like, or I think it's like, I don't know, $14 a month for a business. And it just doesn't make any sense. And so there have definitely been times where I've been working late at night, and the MRRs, like, in the beginning, it was like $32 a month. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? This makes no sense at all. And I wouldn't have kept going if it wasn't fun, right? So clearly I care about it, and I'm not just in it for the money, because otherwise I would have given up a long time ago. And so, yeah, there have been a ton of times, and the times where it's like I'm getting these DMs from these people that I respect, and they're like, hey, this stuff isn't working. What's the deal? And it's like, that just fills me with dread, and I hate it so much. And so my personal constitution is not totally resilient to those kinds of things, where some people would be like, I don't know, I shipped it before I was ready, and who cares? And it's like, oh man, that really stings for me personally. So a lot of those have been like, what am I actually doing here? But I think because I find the problem so interesting, because I find the results so useful, and because I think there is a path forward, I've just kept going. I mean, this new infrastructure makes me personally feel a lot more at ease. I feel like I'll be disappointing fewer people in the off chance that, like, Vercel, takes 2.5 seconds to wake up. So I feel a lot better personally about that. And then I think separating it from this dream of, like, $10,000 MRR and making it free, and just kind of like disassociating that altogether, I feel like that's going to be a big win, because then I'm less concerned about, like, okay, well, I've spent 400 hours working on it and I've made $8. Is that a good ROI? I don't think so. And then that just kind of goes out the window, and it becomes this separate thing of, like, marketing for the Hammerstone Aaron universe. And I feel better about that.
Yeah. Is there something you would have done differently looking back over the whole journey?
It's a good question. That requires introspection. I prefer the infrastructure talks. Let's see. We
do both here on 20% time.
Yeah, for real. I think from the beginning, I would have maybe, God, that's hard to say. I was going to say I would have maybe done this infrastructure differently from the beginning. However, Vercel was the most obvious path forward because of its ease of use and developer experience. So I don't know, even with two separate answers. Knowing what I know now, I would have done infrastructure differently. If I had to do it all again with the same knowledge that I had back then, I would have done it the exact same way. So I don't know.
That was a very politically correct answer.
So you've talked a bit throughout this episode about kind of like what's coming in the future, right? You've talked about the redesign. You've talked about what's coming with infrastructure, price changes. Is there anything else kind of coming next for Torchlight that folks who are listening to this should pay attention to or be on the watch for?
Yeah, I think I've covered everything that's coming. I guess my one request would be when the time does come that it's time to like start the hype train, that we get people on the hype train. And so at some point in the future, in the near future, there will come a time where Torchlight has a brand new Titan implemented design. Torchlight has a JavaScript in browser client, and Torchlight is publicly free. Like I said, it's kind of already free, but Torchlight is advertised as being free. At that point, I'm going to be trying to like spread the good news of Torchlight. And should you feel so inclined, dear listener, I would appreciate the help. But I think that is very transparently my roadmap. And I hope to execute on that in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, I think we're going to do all we can because, I mean, we all love Torchlight already.
Oh,
and with all the things that you've outlined, like the things that are coming, who wouldn't want to use it, really? Come on.
Well, thanks. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
So that's actually all the questions that we had. Before we go, is there anything that you wished we would have asked you about Torchlight that we didn't get a chance to cover?
You mentioned the name.
Oh yeah.
Tell us.
I'm particularly pleased about the name. I don't know. I shouldn't have brought this up because I don't really know. it just came to me. I just love it so much. No, so I was thinking like, how do I kind of get highlight worked in there? Because I'm, not exceedingly clever and I kind of wanted to like be on the nose about it. And so I just started looking up different words that had light included in it. And I came across Torchlight and the .dev was available. And I thought of all the cool like logos that could be made out of it. And it just tickled me so much that I had to do it. And so I was super pleased with it. And I have like, if I had to do anything over again, what would I change? Not the name. The name totally rules and I love it.
I think it's really clever. And I like
Thanks.
it. So. Very good.
All right. Aaron, where can folks find you online? Where should they go?
Yeah, so what we've been talking about is Torchlight at torchlight.dev. Yep. You can find a bunch of other packages at hammerstone.dev, including Sidecar, Refine, all of that stuff. And then you can find me personally on Twitter at Aaron D. Francis, D as in Daniel. So I'm there all the time. Come hang out.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I learned way more about Torchlight than I expected. I think I understood most of the infrastructure talk. I'm not a dev. I just pretend to know what I'm talking about sometimes. So thank you so much. And yeah, this has been fun.
It's been amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks.